There are people who die slowly, not from illness, not from age, but from silence, from the kind of quiet that hums through the bones and settles in the cracks of a too big house. I didn't always live like this, but these days, most mornings, I wake up forgetting what day it is, because it doesn't matter. I brew the same coffee. I wipe down counters already clean, and I pretend the echo of my own footsteps is company enough. That morning was different. I remember pacing around the living room, adjusting the throw pillows for the third time. The breeze through the screen door carried the scent of pine and the distant sound of a lawnmower, but none of it registered. I was too wrapped up in the thought my grandson Caleb was coming home. And for once, this house wouldn't be so. Still, the doorbell rang. I nearly tripped over myself getting to it. When I opened the door, Caleb stood there with that same lopsided smile I'd loved since he was little. But beside him was someone else, tall, dark-skinned, young, handsome in a quiet, careful kind of way. He looked like he wasn't sure if he should be there. "Hi, Gran," Caleb said, rubbing the back of his neck. "This is Tyler, my roommate. I hope it's okay. I kind of brought him with me." I blinked, just once, then smiled. "Of course it's okay. Come on in, both of you." Inside, Caleb explained Tyler's parents were splitting up, and summer at campus felt lonelier than usual. He didn't have anywhere to go, Caleb said, voice softening, and I thought, maybe here. I laughed. "Honey, I live alone. Two of you sounds a whole lot better than just me and the cat." Tyler smiled then, just a small curve of the lips, but it changed everything about his face. It was like watching the sun peek through storm clouds. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Call me Eleanor," I replied. "None of that ma'am business in this house now. Are you hungry?" Lunch was my usual kind of overkill: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. I even baked a blueberry pie that morning, though I told myself I wouldn't. Caleb filled the room with stories, most of them about Tyler, how he got them out of a parking ticket with nothing but a smile, how girls followed him around campus like ducklings. I listened, I laughed. But every now and then, I found my eyes drifting. Tyler didn't talk much, but when he did, his voice was smooth, deep like the bottom of a river, slow like jazz. He had that calm confidence that didn't need to prove anything. And I caught myself watching. The way his fingers gripped the fork, the line of his jaw, the way he listened, nodding gently, always present. For a second, I forgot myself. I forgot the number that marks my years. I forgot that I was supposed to be nothing more than the sweet old woman serving lunch, and that was the first crack in the dam. There are people who die slowly, not from illness, not from age, but from silence, from the kind of quiet that seeps into the wallpaper and lingers in the corners of rooms no one visits anymore. I didn't always live like this, but now the quiet has weight. It presses against my chest each morning like a thick wool blanket I didn't ask for. And I wear it anyway. That Friday, I woke up before the sun had fully risen. It was still dim outside, the air cool with the lingering breath of spring fading into summer. I pulled on a floral blouse, ironed slacks, then made my usual coffee, hazelnut, too sweet. But it reminded me of something, though I don't remember what anymore. Caleb was coming, my grandson, 23 now, in college across the country in Philadelphia. I hadn't seen him since Christmas, and even then, it was only for a day. I walked around the house like a woman, expecting royalty, fluffing cushions that didn't need fluffing, wiping down the already gleaming kitchen counters, putting out the blue ceramic mugs instead of the regular ones. They chipped too easily, but they were beautiful. And today, I wanted beautiful. I kept glancing out the front window, then checking the mirror, then smoothing my hair, though nothing ever stayed in place for long anymore. When the doorbell rang, I nearly jumped. My heart leapt. An old familiar rhythm I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. Real, unfiltered, no caffeine needed excitement. I opened the door and there he was, Caleb, tall, warm smile, same kind brown eyes. But next to him stood someone I didn't recognize, a stranger. He was just as tall, if not taller, skin deep and smooth, like river stone, dark eyes, strong shoulders, and the kind of quiet energy that pulled the room toward him, even before he said a word. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. "Hey, Gran," he said. "This is Tyler, my roommate. I hope it's okay." I kind of brought him with me. I paused, just for a second, just long enough to blink, adjust. Then I smiled. "Of course it's okay. Come in, both of you." The house shifted the moment they walked in, like it remembered how to breathe. Caleb spoke quickly, explaining. Tyler's parents were separating. He didn't have anywhere to go for the summer. Campus was closing most of the dorms, and I was the only option that felt like a home. "He's quiet," Caleb said. "You'll like him." "I already do," I replied without thinking. Tyler looked up, surprised, then smiled shy, crooked, just enough to light the space around him. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. "Call me Eleanor, please, ma'am. Makes me feel like I should be offering you hard candy from a lace tin." He chuckled, low, soft. It stirred something I didn't expect. I cleared my throat. "You too hungry?" I made enough food for 6. We ate in the little sunlit kitchen. Caleb told stories about road trips, awkward professors, late-night dorm pranks. He made Tyler the star of every story. "Ty's got this ridiculous charm," he said, pointing with his fork. "Even the cops like him." Tyler laughed it off, but his eyes flicked toward me more than once. And I noticed everything. The way he chewed slowly, carefully. How he always waited before speaking, like his words mattered. The way his shirt fit, like it had been washed too many times, soft against his skin. And I caught myself watching just a little too long. It had been years since anyone made me feel not just noticed, but aware of my body, of time, of the way the sun hit the table at noon and made everything look golden after lunch. We sat on the porch. I sipped iced coffee while the boys stretched out in the grass. Caleb laughed. Lazy and happy, Tyler lay back, arms behind his head, eyes half closed. "You've got a wild yard, Eleanor," he said suddenly. "The hedges look like they're trying to escape." I laughed. "I like them unruly. They match me." "Mind if we trim them later?" he offered. "Make the place feel sharp again." "Only if you let me pay you in pie," I said. "Best offer I've had all year." He smiled again, and something in me unraveled. That night, I stood at the sink rinsing dishes that didn't need rinsing. The boys had gone to their rooms. The house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. A quiet that hummed with something new, a quiet that didn't weigh as much. And as I turned off the faucet and wiped my hands dry, I whispered, not to anyone in particular, "Please, let this feeling stay a little while longer." The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains like it was trying to wake something buried deep inside me. I stretched slowly, bones cracking in protest, then pulled on my gardening gloves. Not that I intended to garden. I just needed something to do with my hands. I heard laughter through the kitchen window before I saw them. Caleb and Tyler were already outside. Tyler, holding my old electric trimmer like it was a power tool from some sci-fi movie. "This thing still work?" he called out, examining the rusted blades. "Depends what you're trying to trim," I said. Stepping outside, he grinned. "Your bushes, Eleanor. They're looking a little rebellious." I snorted. "They've been wild since the Clinton administration. I stopped fighting them years ago. Then it's time someone stepped in." And just like that, they got to work. Caleb dove into the hedges with the clunky garden shears, muttering under his breath about jungle warfare. Meanwhile, Tyler started with the front lawn, the mower growling to life beneath his hands. I watched from the porch, coffee cup warming my palms, trying not to feel anything. But I did. The way his shoulders moved under that white t-shirt, the ease in his posture, like his body knew its own strength and didn't need to prove it. There was grace in the way he worked, effortless, focused, present. The sun climbed higher, and sweat began to bead on his forehead. He wiped it with the back of his hand, then glanced toward me with a half smile that could have unraveled a steel cable. I looked away. My heart thudded in a rhythm I hadn't felt in decades. Not since the early days, before my ex-husband stopped looking at me like I was still someone worth seeing. Tyler didn't say much as he worked, but he kept stealing little glances, just enough to make me question if I was imagining things, just enough to make me wish I was. Caleb, oblivious as ever, began stacking the trimmed branches in a pile by the curb. He was humming to himself. Some old song I couldn't name. Everything felt easy, light, like summer had paused time for just this one perfect moment. "Hey, Eleanor," Tyler called out, voice raised over the mower's engine. "You okay over there?" I straightened up, as okay as a woman can be, while two boys tear apart her lawn. He laughed, a rich, full sound that made something warm twist low in my stomach. just making room for the flowers to breathe. That your poetic way of justifying yard destruction. Only if it works. It did far more than it should have. He turned back to the mower, and I stayed on the porch, torn between wanting to disappear into the house and wanting to stay right there, to keep looking. When they finally finished, the lawn looked immaculate, the hedges trimmed, the grass even and green. It was almost unsettling how tidy everything felt. You didn't have to go all out, I said as they both wiped their hands and stood admiring their work. It was fun, Caleb said. Besides, you deserved a yard that doesn't look like it wants to eat you alive. Tyler walked toward the porch, the trimmer now silent at his side. Honestly, he said, I like doing stuff with my hands. It clears my head. I nodded. Well, you certainly cleared the hell out of my hedges. He paused, then leaned one arm casually on the railing. It was nice, trimming your bushes. Eleanor, feel free to call me any time they grow back. I froze. The air between us felt heavier than it should have. His eyes held mine, steady, unreadable, but not innocent. And for 1 second, I forgot every reason I should walk away. Instead, I smiled. Well, it's been years since anyone took care of them. Feels good to have someone around who knows what they're doing. He raised an eyebrow, just the slightest lift. And then he laughed soft, smooth, unhurried, the kind of laugh that leaves a mark. Caleb waved from the driveway. I'm grabbing a drink, want anything? I'm good, Tyler said, still watching me. Thanks, though. When Caleb disappeared into the house, I cleared my throat. You must be feeling sticky after all that work. A bit, he admitted. That sun's no joke. The shower, S at the end of the hall, first door on the left. I'll grab you a towel. Thanks, Eleanor. I turned to go inside, but I felt his gaze on my back all the way to the door. And maybe it was wrong, maybe it was foolish, but part of me, an ancient, aching part, hoped he was still watching. The house had settled back into stillness. Caleb had gone out to meet an old friend for coffee. Tyler was napping, or so I assumed. I'd tried to busy myself, washed a dish that was already clean, watered a plant that didn't need it, straightened the same picture frame 3 times. But the quiet, it crept in like a draft under the door, not cold, just persistent, reminding me of what life had been before their voices filled these walls again. I wandered toward the hallway, told myself I was just checking the thermostat, or maybe that I needed water. It didn't matter, my feet carried me quietly, almost of their own will. I passed Caleb's room first, door shut, blinds pulled empty. Then I reached Tyler's. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of warm light spilled into the hallway. I hesitated. Then, barely breathing, I pushed it open just enough to see inside. Tyler sat propped up in bed, shirtless. A pair of gray sweatpants hung low on his hips. A laptop balanced on his knees. His skin caught the light, smooth and warm-toned, like bronze in late afternoon sun. He looked focused, unaware. Then, in a moment that felt both accidental and inevitable, he turned and saw me. He jumped slightly, snapped the laptop shut like I'd caught him committing a crime. Eleanor, God, I didn't hear you, he said, voice tight. So sorry, I said quickly, heart thudding. I didn't mean to. I was just passing by. The light. No, it's fine. He ran a hand through his hair. I was just watching a horror movie. It got to me. A horror movie? I asked, skeptical. Which one? The, Conjuring 2, I think. I raised an eyebrow. That one, I said, teasing gently. I watched it alone, in the dark, without blinking. You sure you're not hiding something else behind that laptop? His laugh came slow and sheepish. Maybe just my pride. A beat of silence, then, almost without thinking, I said it. Well, I haven't seen a good scare in a while. Mind if I join you? He blinked. The surprise in his face was immediate, but he recovered quickly. Sure, yeah, come on in, plenty of room. I stepped inside, closed the door softly behind me, crossed the room like I wasn't trembling, just slightly, and sat beside him on the bed. The screen lit up again, bright, too close in the dark. He scrolled through the horror section, paused on something newer. Let's try this one, supposed to be creepy, he said. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As the movie began, we both leaned back, not touching, but close, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his skin. My breathing slowed, then quickened again. I didn't watch the screen, I watched his profile. The flickering light playing across his jawline, the curve of his mouth, his focus. And then, a jump scare, I startled reflex. My body leaned into his. Before I could stop myself, I was pressed lightly against his chest. I froze, heart hammering, then pulled back too fast. Sorry, I said, laughing awkwardly. That one got me. He looked down at me, not unkind, not surprised. No need to apologize, he said softly. It's just a movie, Eleanor. He paused. Then, without hesitation, wrapped his arm gently around my shoulder. Don't worry, I've got you. My body stilled, not from fear, but from something I hadn't felt in years, something weightless, like warmth blooming from the center of my chest outward. I leaned into him, just slightly, let my head rest against his shoulder. We sat that way as the movie played on, forgotten. The silence between us no longer felt empty. And for the first time in longer than I cared to admit, I didn't want the night to end. The movie had long since faded into the background. The flickering light from the laptop cast shadows along the walls, soft and rhythmic, like waves lapping against a shore. Tyler's arms still rested around my shoulders, not heavy, not possessive, just there, a quiet presence that made everything else in the world feel far away. I could hear his breathing, steady, warm, and I hated how much I noticed it. I should have stood, said thank you, left the room. But I didn't. I stayed longer than I should have. His fingers brushed lightly against my upper arm, almost by accident, but not quite. The air between us shifted. He turned his head, and our eyes met, not wide or startled, but searching, both of us waiting for the other to look away. Neither of us did. I keep thinking, he said quietly, How strange it is that someone can walk into your life for just a few days and it still feel like something real. I swallowed. You don't even know me, I whispered. I do, he said. I know what loneliness looks like. And I know when someone is trying very hard to pretend they're fine. My breath caught. He wasn't wrong. Something inside me shifted like a door, swollen from years of silence, creaked open just a little, enough to let something in. And then, before I could talk myself out of it, I leaned in, just a fraction, just enough for the space between us to disappear. My lips met his soft, unsure. The world didn't end, lightning didn't strike. But something inside me broke open. He stilled, only for a moment, then kissed me back. His hand moved to cradle the back of my neck. My fingers curled into the hem of his shirt. It wasn't fast. It wasn't frantic. It was slow, deliberate, a language neither of us had spoken in a long time, but somehow still remembered. And when we pulled apart, both of us breathless, I was the first to speak. I shouldn't have done that. He shook his head, eyes steady on mine. Apologize. Tyler, I began, but he reached out, placed a single finger gently over my lips. I've been feeling this since the moment I stepped in this house, he said. There's something about you, Eleanor, something that makes me want to stay. The laptop screen dimmed, then darkened completely. We were left in half-light. Hearts louder than the room could hold, he reached for my hand, held it like it was something precious. And in that quiet, I realized that what scared me most was not the kiss, not the risk, not even the age between us. What scared me was how alive I suddenly felt. How much I didn't want to let that feeling go. I barely remembered walking back to my room. My hands trembled as I closed the door behind me, fingers lingering on the knob. The silence wasn't kind this time. It felt heavy, full of questions I didn't want to answer. I stood there in the dark for a long time, afraid to move, afraid that if I did, it would all become real. What had I done? I sat at the edge of my bed, the same bed I'd slept in for over a decade alone. The sheets were neatly tucked, the pillows perfectly fluffed. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, except me. My reflection caught in the mirror across the room, lit only by the faint glow from the hallway. It looked like a ghost. A woman paused between two versions of herself, the one she'd become, and the one she thought was gone forever. I touched my lips, still warm, still tingling from the kiss. It had been years, years since anyone had looked at me that way, touched me with care, not obligation, made me feel like I mattered, not as a mother, not as a grandmother, just as me. But I couldn't ignore the voice in my head, you're too old. He's just confused. This is dangerous. What would Caleb think? The shame came quick, curling in my stomach like smoke. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to press it back in. But the damage was done. I had let something out, something I didn't even know I was still holding, desire, longing, a deep, aching need to be seen. I got up and paced the room once, twice, 10 times. The floor creaked beneath my slippers. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like it was watching me. I stopped at the dresser, opened the top drawer, pulled out an old photograph, me in my 40s, laughing, hair longer, eyes brighter. That woman had hope. That woman hadn't been abandoned, hadn't built walls so tall no one could climb over them. I felt a sting in my throat. Maybe it wasn't about Tyler at all. Maybe it was about remembering who I used to be. There was a light tap at the door. I startled, but didn't answer. A pause. Then a soft sound of paper sliding under the door. I waited until the hallway was quiet again, then walked over and picked it up. A note, folded neatly, my name written in careful handwriting, Eleanor. I don't know what happens next. I don't even know if tonight was right. But I meant it, every second, every word. Thank you for letting me feel something again. Tyler, I pressed the note to my chest, tried to slow my breathing, tried not to feel so much, tried not to want so badly. But the truth was, I did. And that terrified me more than anything. The morning came too early. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out of memory and shame, heartbeat skipping each time I replayed the night in my mind. Downstairs, the smell of toast and coffee drifted through the air. For a moment, I let myself pretend that it was just a normal summer morning, that nothing had changed. I came down slowly, hair pulled back, face washed, everything in place. Tyler was at the kitchen counter, back turned, pouring 2 mugs of coffee like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. "Morning," he said, without turning around. "Morning," I replied, carefully. He turned then, handed me a mug. His eyes searched mine for something, but he didn't push. And I didn't run. We stood in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't empty, but full of words we hadn't decided how to say yet. Caleb walked in a minute later, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "That smells amazing," he said, reaching for a slice of toast. I watched him, so blissfully unaware. Tyler sat across from me at the kitchen table. His leg brushed mine under the table barely, just enough to make me flinch, just enough to make me feel every nerve in my body light up again. "So, what's the plan today?" Caleb asked between bites. "I was thinking we could drive up to the coast," Tyler said casually. "Get out of the house for a bit." "Sounds good to me," Caleb said. "You up for it, Gran?" I nodded slowly. "Sure sounds nice." The day passed in fragments, driving along winding roads, stopping for coffee in a seaside town, walking along the cliffs, with the wind whipping our jackets open. Caleb did most of the talking. Tyler and I walked a few paces behind him. At one point, when Caleb turned to take a photo of the water, Tyler leaned closer. "You've been quiet." I kept my eyes on the horizon. "I don't know what to say," I murmured. "You don't have to say anything." His voice was gentle, like a thread pulling me closer without force. Back home that evening, Caleb headed up to shower. Tyler lingered in the kitchen, drying dishes beside me. He handed me a plate. Our fingers touched, something small, but not meaningless. He leaned in, voice low. You don't have to pretend it didn't happen, Eleanor. I stared at the dish in my hands. It shouldn't have, I said quietly. But it did, he replied. And it wasn't nothing, not for me. I set the plate down, wiped my hands, turned to face him. Tyler, I said, and my voice almost broke. You're kind and young. And I don't know what part of you thinks this could ever make sense. He stepped closer, not too close, but enough. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to be real. I looked at him, at the calm in his face, the certainty. There was no pressure, no demand, only an invitation. And I realized I wasn't afraid of him. I was afraid of how badly I wanted to say yes, of how much I wanted to be wanted. Caleb called from upstairs. Gran, where's the extra towel? I stepped back, cleared my throat. In the hallway closet. I called up. Tyler gave me a soft smile, didn't say another word, just finished the dishes beside me, and in the quiet that followed, I felt something unspoken begin to root itself deep inside me, something dangerous and impossibly alive. The evening came wrapped in gold, that soft, slow kind of light that seems to settle into the skin. Tyler was out back, pulling weeds from the garden without being asked. Caleb had gone for a drive, headphones in, chasing some music only he could hear. I stood at the back door for a while, watching, pretending I was still deciding whether to join him. But I already knew I would. The air smelled of soil and honeysuckle, the kind of scent that makes you feel like the world hasn't given up on beauty yet. You always this determined about plants? I asked, stepping down onto the porch. Tyler looked up, his hands covered in earth. He smiled. I like watching things come back to life. I sat beside him on the step, close, but not touching. He wiped his hands on his jeans. Some things don't need much, just space, a little light, a little care. Sounds simple when you say it, I said, half laughing. He didn't respond, just looked at me long and quiet, until my smile fell. There was something in the air, a shift, like we'd crossed into a place where small talk didn't belong. I looked away first. The sky was deepening into lavender, the kind of purple that makes you believe in softness again. You're different when it's just us, he said finally. So are you, I replied, and then there was no space left to pretend. The silence became a thread pulled too tight, and when it snapped, it didn't make a sound. He reached out, just a hand on mine, but it sent something rushing through me, like a wave of warmth rising from my center, chasing away the cold that had lived there too long. I should have pulled away. I didn't. Instead, I turned toward him. His gaze met mine, steady, unapologetic. And when he leaned in, I didn't stop him. What passed between us then couldn't be measured in touch alone. It was something deeper, a language without words, a quiet surrender. His presence wasn't loud. It was patient. It filled the hollow spaces I hadn't realized were still empty. And as we moved together in that slow, unspoken rhythm, there were no bodies, only breath, no instructions, only instinct, no fear, only the deep and steady hum of two quiet souls colliding. It wasn't fire. It was something slower, wider. A sunrise moving through fog. The world fell away. And for once, the stillness inside me wasn't loneliness. It was peace. It was presence. We stayed there after, hearts still sinking, breath still echoing in the hush between moments. No words, just that new kind of silence, the kind that asks nothing, the kind that knows everything. And when I looked at him, really looked, I didn't see a boy. I saw a mirror held up to a part of me I thought I'd buried, the part that could still bloom. He was gone by morning. No note, no sound, just the faint scent of his cologne lingering in the hallway, like the ghost of a warmth I hadn't realized I'd let in so deeply. I found Caleb in the kitchen, pouring cereal, barefoot and half awake. He left early, he said between spoonfuls. Got a call from his mom. Family stuff. Didn't want to wake you. I nodded, too slowly. My fingers gripped the edge of the counter like I needed help staying upright. Oh, I said, and that was all. The day passed in a kind of haze. I folded towels that didn't need folding, watered plants twice, opened a book, stared at the same page for an hour. I kept waiting for something, a knock, a call, a message, anything to prove I hadn't imagined it, that what happened hadn't bloomed and vanished all in the same breath. But the silence stayed, and it was heavier than before. I went to my room, sat on the bed, stared at the indent his body had left on the other pillow. Still faintly there, still a wound. Maybe it had always been foolish. Maybe he came here needing refuge, not complication. And I had handed him a door I'd sworn to keep locked. It's nothing, I told myself. A passing moment, a summer mistake. But it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like the first time in years I'd remembered what it meant to be wanted, to be chosen, not out of duty or memory, but out of presence. I pressed my palm against my chest. The ache wasn't sharp. It was dull, constant. A low hum of something unfinished. I cleaned the guest room, put fresh linens on the bed, tucked the corners in so tight they couldn't hold anything but absence. I almost erased him from the house. Almost. Then, just before sundown, I sat at the kitchen table with my tea, the mug warm against my palms, the air still. And my phone buzzed, an email, no subject, from him. I clicked, Eleanor. I didn't know how to say goodbye. So I didn't. I'm sorry. You didn't imagine it. I wasn't confused. What happened was the only honest thing I've felt in months. I left because I was scared. Not of you, of what it meant to feel something that real with someone who didn't expect me to be anyone else. I don't know what happens next, but I needed you to know. You gave me something I didn't know I was missing. I hope the garden keeps growing. I hope you keep breathing deep. And if I'm lucky, maybe I'll see you again. Maybe I'll be brave enough to knock next time. Tyler, I read it once, then again, and I cried, not because he left, but because he saw me all the way through and didn't flinch. The email stayed open on my screen for hours. I couldn't bring myself to close it, couldn't move it to a folder, couldn't pretend it didn't reach some part of me. I thought had gone numb years ago. His words settled into me, not like a spark, but like roots. I reread the lines about honesty, about being seen, about how something as small as sitting across a table could mean everything when the silence finally broke. I thought about deleting my reply before I even started. Then I didn't. I wrote slowly, each word like a stone I placed carefully into the water, Tyler. I don't know what this is, either, but I know it wasn't nothing. I've lived a long time with nothing. I know how it feels. You made me remember what warmth feels like, not just in my skin, but in the parts of me that forgot they could still respond to sunlight. It scared me, still does, because I've built a life around quiet, around staying small enough not to need too much. And then you came in and looked at me like I was still someone. And I wanted to believe it. I still do. You don't owe me anything. I'm not waiting on a promise. But if the day ever comes when your knock is real, know that my door isn't locked, and the garden will still be here. Eleanor, I pressed send before I could change my mind, then sat back in the chair, staring at the empty inbox. My hands trembled, but my chest felt open, not fixed, not healed, but no longer afraid to feel the air moving again. Later that evening, I took a walk through the garden. The bushes were already creeping out of their trimmed lines. The wind moved gently through the trees, and I thought of him, the way he touched things like he expected them to grow, the way his silence wasn't absence, but attention, the way he hadn't asked for permission to see me. And somehow, by being exactly who he was, he'd handed me back a piece of myself I thought I'd buried for good. I went to bed with the windows cracked open, the night breeze soft against my cheek. No longer searching, no longer hiding, just waiting, but not in sadness, in knowing. And for the first time in a very long while, I dreamed not of loss, but of beginning. Summer slipped away the way it always does, not with fireworks or a grand finale, just a slow fading. Days growing shorter, air turning sharper, the light a little more golden every afternoon. Caleb packed his bags in early September. He hugged me tight, the kind of hug that told me he hadn't noticed anything strange at all, that whatever storms I had weathered in silence had stayed tucked beneath my smile. I was grateful for that. "You okay, Gran?" he asked before getting into the car. "I'm good," I said, and it wasn't a lie, not anymore. The house felt emptier again, but not in the same way. The quiet didn't press on me like it used to. It simply existed, a companion instead of a burden. I fell into my small routines, coffee on the porch, letters I'd never sent stacked neatly in a drawer, books I finally finished, evenings spent with the windows open, listening to the crickets and remembering how it felt to be held, really held, not out of habit, but out of choice. Sometimes I'd still feel it, that ache, the memory of his hand in mine, of words exchanged not out loud, but in every glance, every breath. It didn't sting anymore, it hummed, a soft echo of something once alive, now part of me Weeks passed. The leaves began to change, rust-colored and brittle at the edges. I trimmed the hedges myself one afternoon badly, but it made me laugh. I wore one of his old flannel shirts I'd found in the laundry. It smelled like rain and summer. Even after the wash, I didn't care. It felt like armor, like memory woven into fabric. Then, one Friday, just before dusk, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, no deliveries, no neighbors. I opened the door slowly, heart steady, but curious. And there he was, hair a little longer, a bag slung over one shoulder, same steady eyes. "Hi," he said, voice low. "I didn't want to send another letter." My throat tightened. "So you came instead," I said. He nodded. "I meant what I said, Eleanor, all of it. And if there's still space, not just in the guest room, but in whatever this is, I'd like to stay or come and go, whatever you'll allow." I didn't answer right away, just stepped aside. He crossed the threshold like he'd never left. I watched him take in the living room, the warm light spilling across the floor, the same blue mugs on the table. Nothing had changed except me. "You look different," he said gently. "I feel different," I replied. And it was true, because that summer I remembered how to feel, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin again.